which I have right here. Okay, so we're going to look at a few different things for our reports. Now, let's just say, and imagine if you will, we live in a country where FEMA and the CDC got their act together, and they've opened up, just to get ready for the inevitable zombie apocalypse that's coming, they've opened up some zombie response centers all over the country. And maybe these are just some places that will take reports of zombie outbreaks and infestations. So they want to make this data available. So, because when I wake up in the morning, if I look out the window and I see my neighbor looking pretty rough, shambling across my front yard and chasing joggers, the first thing I'm going to think to myself is, okay, do I need to take a chainsaw to work, or do I need to take an automatic weapon? So this is where the map tool and reporting this data visually is going to be very, very useful. All right, so what we're going to do first, I'm going to start with just a basic map. I'm going to show you how we can display outbreak data by state, for instance, and then we can break that down into a more detailed report. Okay, so in this situation, I have two data sources right up here. And the great thing about this, too, is that anyone that has the AdventureWorks databases installed can follow along with these examples. I will be posting all of my queries in my blog later on today after the webinar. So, because what I'm doing, and you'll see, is I'm really just aliasing a lot of things and pulling out some really good zombie-style data. So what we have here, I have one connection that goes to the AdventureWorks data warehouse. I'm just calling that my zombie data warehouse. And I also have one to the AdventureWorks 2008 R2, which I'm referring to as ZombieWorks. All right, so first thing we're going to do, I have a brand new project, so let me pull out a report. I'm just going to add a new item here. And I'm going to refer to this as, this first report we'll just call Zombies by State. All right, so I'm going to add my data source, which is just my zombie data warehouse, my zombie DW, and point to my shared data source reference. All right, so let me just pull out one of my queries here. I have some pre-written queries for this. And I'm just going to build a data set real quick. And this data set, of course, we're looking at zombies by state, so I'll just call it zombies by state. So let's just say that we're looking at an overview of every state and how many zombies may actually have been reported in that state already. So we'll just use an embedded data source, or data set rather, sorry. And I'm just going to paste in this query. I'm going to open up in Query Designer so you can get a quick look at what we're actually doing here. And it looks like GoToWebinar is making my screen a little funny here. But you can see I'm just pulling in some of these columns from the AdventureWorks database, and I'm aliasing some things here. So I'm going to have like a number of zombies cited and a response center ID. Because response centers, they're not going to give them a name. They're just going to put them out there in each one of these towns and just give them an ID so they know where these different response centers are. So okay, so we have our first query. Okay, and we have our fields here. Now in the toolbox, I'm just going to drag out the map. And just drop that in. All right, so when using the map tool, you're going to have some choices. The three things we have available are a map gallery. This is going to be pretty common. There's also SSRS shapefiles. Those are pretty interesting. That's one that you don't see used too often, but if you do happen to have shapefiles available to you, you should definitely play around with that. It's pretty nice. Then we have some SQL Server Spatial Query. This is that spatial query, that spatial data that I was talking about earlier. That again isn't used all that often, but there are some examples of it inside the AdventureWorks databases. That's one of the things that I'll be showing you as well towards the end. So in my case, I just want to take the spatial data from our map gallery. So in our map gallery, you'll notice you have the USA right here, USA by state, state exploded, and state inset. These are just going to be different styles of the map. So it's going to give you a preview right over here. You can also break it down into the specific states. So something like this would be very useful if you actually have county data. So if you have all the different counties in that state. So for this first map, I'm going to go with the USA by state exploded. So it's going to space all the states out there for you. So I'll just click Next. And from here, there's a lot of really cool things you can do, actually. You have the option to kind of move things around, crop the map a little bit. And what you'll notice is right down here at the bottom, you can add a Bing Maps layer. This is kind of neat, too, because it's going to make the map much more pleasing to look at in some ways. But also, you have to keep in mind that in order to use a Bing Maps layer, you have to have internet connection. So in the event of a zombie invasion, if power starts going out, you may not have access to that. Well, actually, in that case, this would be totally useless anyway. But just forget that. So here we go. We have the different type of maps layer. You have a road. There's also aerial, like an aerial view. And then there's a hybrid, which is just kind of the map and aerial view put together. And it's kind of like an overlay onto your analytical map that we're about to put together. So in my case, I don't want to use a Bing Maps layer in this case. So I'm just going to keep just a basic analytical map here. All right, so from here, I'll just click Next. And then you have the map visualization. And of course, 3 different options here. You have just a basic map, which is really just going to give you, display areas, sales territories, regions, things like that. Your color analytical map, which that's what we're going to use to visualize the data, so we know, where our like minimum, medium, and maximum are going to be. And then we also have a bubble map. Bubble maps are pretty nice as well, depending on what kind of data you're looking at. They're also kind of nice to lay over the top of other maps. So we'll also be exploring the bubble map options as well. So in this case, I'm just going to go with my color analytical map. All right, and I'll click Next. And it's going to ask me to choose my data set. So that's the only one I have. That's good. So I'll click Next again. Now from here, this looks like a lot of stuff going on here, but there's really only one thing that we need to do. And right up here at the top, these 3 options right here, we just have to decide which one of these fields can we map. So we have to have something in our data that's going to satisfy one of these fields, which in my case, I have a state name. So state province name is what I'm using, so I'm going to map that. Let's see, state province name.